The story I hear out there is that, I grew up, with a silver spoon, but I definitely come from a lower class, background. I had to sell pure water. I feel like I've just been saved. So the goal really will be to supply quality clothes and nothing else. You're gonna sell these products in Africa. Do they have that kind of money to spend?
One woman, abortion.
Hi guys, welcome to the first ever episode of the ReZultz Advertising podcast called Let's Talk ReZultz. This podcast is all about showcasing international talent, and it's aimed to inspire the younger generation who are really keen to get into the creative space, whether it be fashion, whether it be design, whether it be architecture, whether it be music. This podcast is all about helping to inspire those that are trying to get into that industry. Please click like, subscribe, and follow us. The first episode is with the international fashion atelier by the name of Brommon. He's a long-standing friend of mine, and he's about to give us an insight into his journey from where he started to where he is now. Let's hope you enjoy it.
Likewise, my brother.
How's it going?
Not bad at all. Yourself?
I'm good. So first of all, thanks very much indeed for taking the opportunity to sit with us on our first ever episode of our podcast, which is called Let's Talk ReZultz. This whole podcast is really about showcasing creative talent in the industry of the creative world. So it could be fashion designers, architects, artisans, whatever. If you're creating something, we want to have the opportunity to speak to you.
Absolutely.
And it's really all about trying to inspire the next generation of creatives in any particular industry. So it means a lot that we've got this opportunity to do our first episode with you, my friend.
Glad to be here.
So my first question is actually, it's really all about understanding you, okay? And it's a bit of a big question. What can you share with us about your formative days, your days growing up in Ghana, in the UK? How has that influenced and made you into the man that's here with us today?
The story I hear out there is that, I grew up, with a silver spoon, but I definitely come from a lower class, background. I grew up in a small town. I was born and raised in a small town in the Ashanti region called Mampo Asante. I grew up there obviously with my siblings. My mom wasn't around. She left to the UK when I was 2 years. So she came into the picture, later on. My dad wasn't around also. He was a teacher in Nigeria. Born and raised in Asante Mampo. I never left that town till I think I was 14 when I was sent by my mom, to come to the UK. Yeah. So it's been a journey for sure. I think one that has been been very interesting, of hardship. Okay. I would say has been part of it, but it has also played a role, on how far I've come as a person.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really interesting actually, and if you don't mind, I want to unpack that a little bit. Yeah. Mm-hmm. If you take us back to what you just described, when your mum sent for you to come to the UK, right?
Yeah.
Take us back. What did it actually feel like? Can you remember what was going through your emotions and what? Because you were young, right?
I was young. I was 14 at the time.
What did that feel like at the time?
I feel like I've just been saved of the hardship that I guess I went through. It was not easy. Like I said, my parents were not around.
Right.
I was raised by my grandparents.
Okay.
My dad came into the picture later on. And he was a very strict individual.
Like most of our parents.
Exactly, So, I went through stages where I had to sell pure water, and able to get money to go to school the following day. So after school, every single day, I would go home, pack my little water, in the fridge, in the basket.
I read about that.
Go to the local station, sell that, you know, and able to gather money to go to school the following day. So I never really had the typical, you know, childhood, you know, sort of like, you know, experience.
Okay.
Where you're going to, you know, football, you know, just playing as a kid in general.
Okay.
But I think looking back now, you know, it really sort of has played a major role
in who you are now.
In who, you know, the kind of person that I am now. Yeah.
So I just want to pick up on that. You know, I want to pick up on your transition from Ghana to London. How did you manage that transition?
I mean, I remember, you know, remember like it was yesterday when I was called. You know, my dad came and called me. Hey, you know, your mom's, you know, sent for you. You know, you've got to pack your stuff and, you know, head off to Accra. You know. And that whole journey wasn't straightforward. You know, I had to come stay in some village with a connection man.
But was it a surprise to you when your dad said your mum has sent for you? Did you know it was happening, or was it?
At all. It was just something that, you know, Sunday night,
right?
Getting, you know, prepared to go to school the following day, and then, you know, here comes a family member from my mom's side, you know, and say, hey, Kwaku has to go now.
Were you excited?
I was ecstatic. I was ecstatic, you know, so, because I barely left the town.
Right.
This was actually my second time leaving Mampong.
Are you serious?
Yeah, my whole 14, 15 years, that was like my second time leaving that, you know, that town. So you can imagine. And this time going to Accra, you know, that was a whole journey. It wasn't that straightforward at the same time. So the connection man had to take me to his village, you know, while he was prepping all the documentations and stuff like that. And then eventually we went to Abidjan.
I'm just trying to visualize what you probably like.
Yeah, I was like this, you know, a little, you know, a teenager, you know, clueless as in what is going on.
Yeah.
So from, you know, I think that village, I've forgotten what, you know, where it was, from there to Abidjan. And then we stayed there for like a whole month. And then...
Before you went to...
Before, you know, the documentations were ready. And then we transited in Paris.
Okay.
I had my mom's friend was there, so when we got there, you know, she decided to come and take me out for like a day. And I remember coming out of the airport and thinking like I was on a whole different planet, you know.
Yeah.
The village boy, all of a sudden, you know, just thrown in, you know, a whole different planet.
And this would have been in the sort of early 90s? Or?
Late 90s.
Late 90s.
Around 98 there, yeah, you know. Right. So I spent about, I think, 2 or 3 days in Paris, and then we boarded a coach to London.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you went by road?
Yes.
The hustle continued.
You know, was still, you know, on the go, and you know, I got to London. Paris is such a beautiful place. Got to London, I was like, oh well, I'd rather go back.
You're a bit underwhelmed.
Underwhelmed. And
I see.
You know, obviously, my brothers were there at the time. They went through the whole process.
Oh, so your brothers were already there.
So you know, it was at a stage. You know, the older one went.
Right. Okay.
And I was the last.
So that must have been quite helpful in some way.
Exactly. Yeah. So I obviously got there. You know, met them. You know, reunited with them.
With that transition.
Helped, you know. They were a little obviously older, so they had moved out, you know, living a life of their own. All of them had to go and live with my mom in Hackney, as you mentioned earlier, which was at the time the most dangerous place to live in the UK.
Yeah. Hackney back then was...
You know, it was in the deep end, you know, I was thrown in, which was a huge surprise, yeah.
Were there any points where you were like, this is too difficult for me? Because I know what Hackney was like.
Absolutely, yeah. I think my first few months was a struggle. You know, trying to find yourself, you know, trying to find your bearings, you know. My mom was a very busy person, you know, she was running a restaurant, so she barely had time for me. So I was pretty much, you know, left alone, you know, after school.
Right.
I enrolled in a boys' school, you know, Homerton Boys, which was like a prison. Let me just put it that way, you know.
So tell us about Homerton.
It was a very tough place.
Yeah.
You know, and being African, I didn't speak much English back then. You sounded funny, you had an accent.
And back then it wasn't cool to be African.
It wasn't cool at all.
It wasn't cool
you know, like they knew you just came, it was like JJC or something. It was And they hop when you're like, you know, like nothing else. Bullying. So that kicked in because you're just African, you looked different, you sounded different. Apparently I didn't look healthy. So.
How did you navigate all of that though?
I used to get into fight a lot.
Right.
I stood up for myself. So what ended up, happening was if you came and you were insulting, you came to degrade me or in any way, shape or form, I would stand up and, fight back.
Yeah.
So I used to get into trouble a lot. My mom would get called in every now and then.
Right.
Boateng,
right.
They used to call me. Boateng was like, Boateng,
okay.
Boateng is in trouble again. He, got into a fight today.
I can relate, man. I can relate. I got those same phone calls
Absolutely,
as well, man.
yeah.
I got those same phone calls as well.
And I remember I got my first phone. At the time, my mom got me a first, my phone, a mobile phone, which was like now just started
it was
coming out.
It was a novelty back then.
Yes, it was very new. So I got a phone, went to school with it. These guys started to, they wanted to jack me.
Jack.
Jack.
For anyone that doesn't know what jack means, jack means to rob.
To rob you, So after school one day, about 10 boys came after me, and like the central of Hackney, it was like a whole race going on there because these guys were running after me, and I had to find a way to escape. So that was a typical Hackney
that's one of the key memories.
Exactly,
right.
but quite interesting.
So let's sort of fast forward then. So I imagine you found your feet, you adapted, you got into the way of life in London. You started growing. Where did you go after that? After school, did you go to college or university in London?
Yeah, so I went to college. And then dropped out because I think the course my mom wanted me to do at the time, I wasn't interested.
Right. IT.
I wanted to do fashion.
Let's go back one step.
Yes.
Sorry. So at what point did you realize fashion was your calling? Were you in Ghana? Was it when you passed through Paris for a day or two?
Exactly. I remember from a young age, I always liked to look neat.
Okay.
I always kept my
so that's
clothes.
Always been part of your
It's
DNA.
been part of me.
Yeah.
My grandmother used to pull me aside. We had a huge family. Would pull my cousin to the other side and you just point to me and say, "Why can you guys not look like Kwaku?
Yeah.
Look at the way he's ironed his shirt, his trousers."
Yeah.
And back then, you make sure you had a line in there.
One single line.
That was important.
No tracks,
Exactly.
Tracks.
So I was very neat, as a child, kept my clothes nice and tidy.
Yeah.
So I knew there was a passion there,
okay.
but I couldn't really
natural.
explore it,
Right.
because you were just in a village, right? Till I got to London, where I had that exposure.
Okay.
I used to go window shopping, like I would get on a bus all the way to central London, Oxford Street, just to window shop, I'll go and stare at windows and come back home.
Yeah.
At that point, I would say it was more of an interest, till I really sort of, got out there,
right.
Experience, what that whole scene was about.
Okay.
I got to work, eventually in the industry. So that spurred me on more to learn and to pursue the trade.
That's an interesting.